Welcome to today's Iris session, brought to you by BrightRock, provider of the first ever life insurance that changes as your life changes. I'm David O'Sullivan, and today we're here to talk about career planning for your child. A parent's support in a child's career guidance journey has the potential to serve as a major influence in the child's career choice and ultimately the road to success. But things are changing, and careers of today are different from the ones we idealized in our youth. To what extent should you as a parent be involved in this decision-making process? And what can you as a parent do to help your child live up to his or her full potential to pursue a satisfying and successful career that is as a good fit in this day and age? Joining me in the studio, two people to talk about this. One of them is a parent and a celebrity, a broadcaster from Kaya FM, Kuli Roberts. It's good to have you with us, Kuli.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
And also in the studio, we have an educational psychologist, Lisa Anderson, as well. Lisa, welcome to you, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Kuli, I'm going to start with you, and probably your own career choice.
Yes.
When, like me, a broadcaster, you know you want to do broadcasting. It's not something you dilly-dally around. When did you know this was the life for me?
I don't know. I mean, you're so convinced you knew. I didn't know. I mean, all I know is that I wanted to get out of my parents' house.
Really? That was it?
Yeah, that was it. So after varsity, I mean, I was stuck in boarding school for all my life, and then after that, it was like, oh, how can I get out? So then it was varsity. Then after varsity, it's like, oh, what do I do now? Oh, let me go and work for the ANC, because then I'm helping somewhere, because I've been quite fortunate. So I went to work for the ANC, and then after a couple of months, it was like, oh, they're not paying me. Let me go off and find myself. So I went to Fair Lady. Went to Fair Lady, but then the great thing about Fair Lady is that I'd always been writing. I'd always been a writer, so I loved stories, and I'd always been a creator. So I went to Fair Lady, and I got the opportunity to learn about every single department. So I was in layout, I was in the library, I was in beauty, I was in fashion. And then at the end of it, it was like, hey, Kuli, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to go to drum. So then I went to drum, and I was fashion and beauty editor. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I think what I studied at varsity, I think there were a hint that I was going to do what I'm doing now, because I was doing things like anthropology, sociology, English, archaeology, drama, things that had nothing to do with each other, but it was always about people and life.
It's about an education,
isn't
it?
It's about an education.
You're not going to become an archaeologist or an anthropologist,
no.
but you're learning about life.
Yes, and I think that's why then I started with Fair Lady. Then after Fair Lady, it was drum, and then it was pace, and then it was acting, then it was presenting, and now it's broadcasting radio. And I think this is where I wanted to be.
So it really morphed into being a broadcaster.
Yes.
But I suppose the common thing was that it was always media.
Yes.
There was some kind of media
Yes,
involved.
my thesis was about Lady Anne Barnard and how she was the biggest gossip in the Cape. I mean, she used to write all these letters to the English, telling them what was happening in the Cape. And there I am now, today, a gossip columnist and a broadcaster.
That's right.
Yes,
okay, so you kind of fell into it, because for me it was not knowing what I wanted to do. I had to submit my standard 9, what is that, grade 11 results in order to get into medical school. And people said, yeah, go to medical school. But I was 15. So I thought, well, maybe that's what I need to do. And I submitted my results, got into medical school, went, and on day one knew it was absolutely the wrong thing to do. But then I saw my father had been at Rhodes University, and he had the old Rhodes newsletter, and there was an article about a campus radio station starting. I looked at that and I thought, that's actually what I want to do. It was like a light bulb went on. I want to be on the radio.
Nice.
And that's how I got my career going in that regard.
I think I'm still undergoing that journey to find out exactly what it is that I want to do. But I definitely do know that I am very passionate about people, and because I was fortunate, and I am still fortunate, it's always about giving back, and it's always about people learning history, life, and giving back. It's always about giving back.
Certainly. Now, Lisa, for you, an educational psychologist, was psychology always on your radar?
Absolutely not. You know, I'm listening to you and I'm hearing how things kind of evolved and fell into place. You know, you just followed where your heart was leading you. And obviously you had a basis, but I just joined the longest queue at varsity, and I thought, oh, psychology sounds cool. Sociology, English lit, I love literature. Let me just take the path of least resistance. And luckily enough, my career evolved, and then I studied and went into teaching, believe it or not, and then from teaching decided I'd like to marry the education and the psychology components, and then went into postgraduate studies. So things evolved over time, and I think that's the best advice to give to young students, is that they're not going to have the right answer at the beginning. You've got to follow a process.
Well, it seems that we've got 3 people sitting in this room
Yeah.
who are delighted with their career choices, but none of them were made
Never.
at the time where it is this angstful moment. At school, Kuli, were you ever thinking about, was there career guidance at your school?
No, yes, we had guidance counselors. We had access to everything. We had extramural, so if you wanted to, whatever you wanted to do, you could do it. But still, I was just busy doing it and not thinking, what do I want to do and I want to get out of it. But I did know that, history was my passion, and I love reading and I love talking. So, there we go.
It all works out.
It all works out. It all works out.
But now you've got kids.
Now I have kids. I have children. I have a 22-year-old and I have a 19-year-old.
And you are giving advice to youngsters. And this really is what I want to focus on, is for parents of youngsters thinking, what do we need to do? I like to think that my kids are too young for me to start worrying about it. Is this the case, Elisa? 5-year-old and 12-year-old, do I need to worry?
Yeah, no, I don't think you need to worry for the 5-year-old, but the 12-year-old most definitely. You need to start introducing the idea of the world of work, responsibilities, passion, interests, and personality development also contributes
Okay, so
to that.
I really need to start thinking about, I don't have to name the career, but there are things that people should be doing with their younger children, their primary school-aged children, to help them prepare for this big decision to come.
Even discussing your own profession with your child is helpful. I mean, obviously you don't expect them to follow in your footsteps unless it's really their true passion.
Yes.
But just talking about it, and this is where I go every day, and this is what I do, and this is what excites me, and get them interested in looking forward instead of just living in the moment.
Yeah, because at the moment my 5-year-old wants to be an angry bird. I don't think there's a career in that. What did you do for your children? You've got a 20-year-old and a child in the late teens. Am I right?
Yes,
Kuli?
I've got a 19-year-old and a 22. Yeah.
So, where are they in the career path? Are they still in the choice process?
My daughter is actually doing exactly what you did first. She's at Taki's doing her teacher's degree.
Okay.
And what does she want to do with it? She talks about wanting to go to Dubai for a year and be an au pair. And I'm actually looking at you and I'm thinking, maybe she should go into psychology. You were into psychology. But for me, how did I guide her?
Yeah.
I made the environment conducive to learning, because that's how I was raised as well. So there were always books, and we chatted about exactly what she wanted to do. And I suppose there was role playing as well, because I'm in this industry, this frivolous industry, where sometimes she wants to come into the industry and I really don't want her to. So then I ask her, what do you think that I do at work? And most of the time she's right. But the point is that I think by that role playing, I expose her to what it is that I do. But at 22, I suppose I could take her along so she could see. But I don't really want her to be in that industry. I like what she's focused on, and she's focused on helping children, and that's very, very brave. I mean, this is what do you call the clear to school?
Foundation phase.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's taking them raw from their parents. So I think, and I encourage that from as a mum, because also where we come from a place of privilege. So if we can give back,
Yes.
let's give back. And she's doing that through teaching. And I've even said to her, when you finish your degree, if you want to, I can open up a little Montessori for you, and we can have an African languages center where we're learning how to make the mud huts, we're learning how to speak our languages. So I think the other great thing about 2016 is that you can do what people wanted you to do, but incorporate it with what's relevant now.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen a psychologist look this hip and hot. Do you know what I mean? So I think I'm very much encouraged by what's happening, because there are many, many options. Not just like, you're studying teaching, you're going to be a teacher.
I don't know if I can just interject
Please
here.
do,
I'm
Lisa.
hearing a very strong values-based ideology here, and I think that's really important, because it's about what you value, and that's very closely linked to your career choice. If you're just interested in being wealthy and rich, and you idolize what you see on television or in hip-hop videos or whatever the case may be, then that's your value system. But I think if parents talk to their children about what values are and how they contribute to your personal development, then you're also going to steer them in a direction where their career is going to be fulfilling. So it sounds like your daughter's doing something where she feels she's giving back, and in turn there's going to be reciprocity.
Yes, yes.
So I think that's really important.
And I suppose these are values that you want to instill in your child at an early
Absolutely.
stage. The
Absolutely.
value of work,
Absolutely.
the value of money, even
Yeah.
teaching a kid what we get our kids to understand how much they need to pay for something, pocket money, things like that.
And the
just
value-
to understand what the working environment later will be like.
Absolutely, and the value of contributing to society, you know, and realizing that there's
Yeah,
always
but
going to be human interaction, and what can you do to make your environment better? It's not just about the individual.
Lisa, what is the process that you take youngsters through who come to you for advice? You've got a practice called Square Peg. Tell me about that.
Well, the name is quite indicative of what I view. You can't fit a square peg into a round hole.
I love that.
So it's focused on individuality, but basically it's bringing out a child's identity. There's not enough focus on who am I and what my personality construct is. We often base who we are on the role models around us, and sometimes they're not necessarily the healthiest ones. But a lot of children just get lost in the sea of their peers or whatever their school prescribes. So what we do is focus on the individual, and then the process involves a personality test, interviewing, creating a personal narrative, and then doing psychometric assessments which would guide you into a specific field. And yes, it's debatable because it's very prescriptive. And that's why I incorporate a narrative therapy into that, where you create a personal narrative in terms of what are your roots, where do you come from,
Very good.
and how does this make you who you are? You know, where does your family fit in? Where does your cultural heritage fit in? And then we branch out into the psychometrics. So it's kind of a mismatch.
I share Kuli's response there. Psychometric tests, I always feel that they're trying to pigeonhole me, and I don't
Absolutely.
know. But I love this idea of the personal narrative.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But now, that kind of, it requires a bit of introspection. And
Absolutely.
I don't know, as a youngster, I would have had even the intelligence to do that.
That's where we do a lot of emotional intelligence training, so that EQ influence comes in. And as a pre-teen or adolescent, you need to focus on that as a parent, and you need to speak to your child about reflecting and who I am and where I'm going and what my value system is, exactly what we've been discussing.
I think you were doing that all along, the way your daughters turned out.
Yes, and I was going to say something about
Are you going, yes, yes, yes?
Yes, I was completely agreeing with you. Because what you're doing is that you are extending your way of life.
Absolutely.
As opposed to, you've lived now, suddenly something completely foreign, something you know nothing about. Yeah,
Yes.
I love what you're saying because it's a holistic approach.
It's got to be part of who you are, your makeup, because your job fuels you as an individual and as an adult, and you evolve over time as your career evolves, as
Love it.
both of you have just described.
So once you've got that personal narrative, then what do you do to try and shape or try and guide a young person? What age are we talking about? Where you get
From 12 upwards. I
Okay.
mean, I would say grade 8 and 9 is really important. Grade 9, you choose your subjects for grade 10. So by that point, you should at least have an idea of where you're headed. And that's the mistake in our education system, is these children are sitting in grade 9, choosing subjects for grade 10, and they absolutely have no idea of where they're going. So they just choose the popular ones, maths, science, and which fit the generic degrees of lawyer, doctor, accountant, which I'm sorry to say are not the most popular degree choices for the evolving career evolution. So
Kuli, when you think back at your children, do you think this was a process that unwittingly, unconsciously, you were actually doing with them?
Yes. I mean, and now that I know, I would do it again.
Yeah. Now you've spoken about one child. What's the other child?
The other child is in England. He's a boy. He plays rugby. He's taken a year off. He finished school last year, so he wants to study computer sciences, but he was in first team rugby for like 3 years. So he's very much a rugby player. So now he's found a club in where is he? In Essex. He's found a club in Essex, and he's playing there, and he's just mucking around for a year. But what he's doing next year is coming back to do computer sciences.
And what stage did he realize computer sciences was something he wanted to do? It wasn't because he could play Minecraft well, was it?
No, it was also I suppose same stories. That's a way of life where someone likes something and then you start encouraging them and you start buying them every single thing that pertains to what they like. And then they also like rugby and you're like, okay, do you have to like everything? Then they like cricket, but then they first team rugby. So you know, okay, fine, this one is concentrating on computer science and is concentrating on rugby. If he's going to do them together, we can hope so, as long as he's happy.
But Lisa, now that seems to be a good fit. This is a youngster who's got these two different interests. One is computer sciences, one is rugby. He's now able to explore, knowing, I would imagine, that that isn't a career of longevity. You're going to get, once you pass your 20s, you're old, and you need something else.
Yes.
Do you recommend these gap years as a place for kids to work things out?
Yeah, it's so debatable, but I really do recommend it, and it depends on the individual. It's, you know, if you've got a child who you know is conscientious enough to take the year off and then get back into the saddle, great. But if it's an individual who really struggles to motivate themselves and where procrastination seems to have been the general theme in their high school career, then I don't advise it, because then what happens is the gap year turns into 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Well, if he's failed matric 9 times, don't
but
gap year.
no.
That's right.
But I also recommend choosing a career field which allows you to use a variety of skills, you know, and to extend them to a variety of environments. And that's what I think is important now. You've got to be able to branch into many facets of the world of work, and balancing sport and then coming back to computer sciences. There's nothing wrong with that. He's probably also developing as an individual in this gap year. So.
But I always found that it was people who went into university not quite knowing what they wanted to do, but choosing subjects that would ultimately lead them to a certain career. So chemical engineering, you are going to be a chemical engineer. But and if you didn't like it, well, then you were really stuck. But if you chose law, for example, you can do almost anything with law. I did law, and I just use it because it helps me in
Emma
talking.
Sadler's doing Twitter law. What is this?
Yeah. Emma Sadler is one of the social media lawyers.
Social media lawyer.
Exactly. But you can choose.
Yes.
You can go into business with law. You can go into teaching with law. You can do all sorts of things with a legal background. You don't have to be a lawyer.
Exactly.
And I would imagine education is another thing where you're going to learn so many different skills. So it's almost like a shotgun approach. Let me learn a lot of things.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, once I finish my tertiary education, I might then have found my niche.
Exactly.
I was concerned that was possibly a wrong approach. But
no, for me, it's the best approach, and I like it, unless you really know medicine or, you know, with the degrees where there's no variability, that's really what you want to do. And I mean, if you look at statistics, we've got one of the highest first-year dropout rates. And it's all because there hasn't been adequate thought, preparation, planning, guidance, and children are just going into degrees either that they think their parents want them to go into, or a degree that's going to bring them status in a community, or anything like that. And it's got nothing to do with, well, hey, who am I?
That's right.
What do I want to pursue? And varsity is actually a time to grow as a person.
Absolutely.
It's not just academics, and I think people forget about that.
That's why I always advocate for people, if you're going to go to university, go to a university out of your town. If you grew up in Joburg, don't go to Wits. I mean, you grew up in Grahamstown.
Yes,
you went to UCT.
Yes, I couldn't.
Exactly. I grew up in Joburg, I went to Rhodes.
Yes.
And I felt that the biggest thing I got out of Rhodes University was I learned to grow up.
Yes.
I might have studied journalism, which ultimately got me on the path to being a journalist, but there were other people who did journalism who became actors, who went into television, who didn't actually go into radio. You could choose what you were doing. But it was a bit of a false start for me because I didn't get the proper guidance, and I think that what we're saying here, that is absolutely key. So do you advise anybody who's now sitting going, I don't quite know, they should go for some kind of professional assistance, going to somebody like you and learning how to do this personal narrative, which I think must be essential?
Yeah, I think getting professional assistance is good. Look, not all ed psychs work on a narrative approach, so it's finding the best fit therapist as in any situation. But yes, getting the guidance and doing as much job shadowing as you can, and exploration and investigation, and being inventive and thinking out of the box, and actually having discussions with your parents saying, okay, well, where do we think we're going to be in 10 years' time? You know, instead of focusing on traditional careers, get your teen to start creating or inventing what they think a future career could be, because then you're getting them to think ahead.
Yeah, that's right.
And then say, okay, well, what skills would you need? You know, you would need to learn a few things, but you would need some soft skills too, interpersonal skills, communication skills, whatever the case may be, and then start guiding them in those directions.
I like this idea of the practical work. How many youngsters do you have knocking on your door saying, can I come and watch you at work?
Oh, all the time. And I think that's one of our roles is that we should be willing to share. We should be mentoring, and we should be helping out. I mean, that's another one of the things that I do with my kids. That we go out to a Tembisa orphanage and we help out. We have to be. You're part of the society.
Yeah.
You have to give back.
But for me, for youngsters who think that radio is a fabulously glamorous world and all it requires is arriving and talking into the microphone, not realizing
There's
there's a lot of prep that goes on.
There's a lot of prep, and there's post-production, pre-this, and there's a lot. But I mean, of course, we do make it look good.
Yeah, it is. It's a fabulous world once you're in it.
It is.
But
there's a lot of work.
It's so much, and it's what I try and instill into people is that I didn't just arrive in one day in radio. It took 20 years of other stuff before I could actually be that person who could run a talk show.
Yes.
And the same is true for you. You did loads of other things and accumulated that knowledge, and then that career happened for you.
Yes.
But I'm very happy to have people come and job shadow so they can actually see the mechanics. But they can't actually be the person behind the microphone. They've got to be the person involved in the pre-production.
Yes.
And understand what the job entails.
Well, that's what happened to me at Fair Lady, where I got an opportunity to work in every single department, then decided where do you want to go.
Yeah.
So we need to give back. We need to give people opportunities so that it can also help them choose.
So what I'm getting from this is from a young perspective then, from the age of 12, going through your schooling time, you try and do as much practical job shadowing as you can.
Yeah.
Do this exercise of this personal narrative, understand where you come from, and how you're evolving as a person, and I suppose those are the two key essential things to do, aren't they?
Yeah.
And hopefully that will then help you understand what subjects you should be taking in those final 2 years of your schooling career.
I mean, that's absolutely true, because a lot of students end up taking subjects that are really not a best fit, or where they don't have ability in. Remember, you've also got to understand, okay, these are my aspirations, but what is my actual cognitive ability?
Yeah.
What metacognitive skills do I have that are going to facilitate this process? And I'm not one to shoot somebody down if they've got a dream. Yes, of course, we need to follow our dreams, but we need to be realistic.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're going to set ourselves up for disappointment.
I set myself up for disappointment in my third year because I did 2 majors, history and political analysis. My third year, sitting at the lecture, looking at him like thinking, he's got to be speaking Japanese. I don't know what he's saying. So I had options because I was versatile.
Yeah.
But I love what you've just said there, is that be realistic. And
Absolutely.
my son's school, he goes to Bella Vista, which is a special needs school. And the teachers there tell the parents, don't go and tell your kid, dream to be whatever you want to be, because they do come with a certain handicap in the way that they approach learning. But I think it's true for any child.
It is for any child.
You can't just say, well, I want to be an astronaut. Dream it and it will happen. You're going to end up being shattered.
You don't realize it, and it affects your self-esteem. So then you give up, and then you're sitting with an individual who had a dream, but was completely deflated.
Someone else's dream.
But then how do you counter the view which says encourage a child to think big? Because at the same time I'm saying, well, don't think too big. I don't know what advice to help me out here.
Think big, but be realistic, and realize what your individual skill set is. We all have skills, and I advise parents, we call it asset mapping. So we sit with the child when we're doing the personal narrative and say, you're unique, what are your strengths? And we have a conversation, and through the conversation they realize, I'm actually a really good listener. I'm a trusted confidant to my friends. I never realized this. And these aren't skills that are highlighted in the schooling process. You measured by the marks you get for your science exam, and that's not necessarily correct.
That's what you meant by the
Square peg in the round hole.
There we go.
But
so you've got an asset map.
Yeah, I've never heard of this concept of asset mapping. This is a new thing for me. But would I need your professional guidance to take me through those steps?
I think so. I think it's important for parents to be very much a part of the career counselling process. So you meet with the teenager, but then you have joint sessions, because you've got to collaborate. Your parents have got to A, fund the process in most cases, and B, do actually know their children quite well.
Yeah.
So when we're being realistic about what your skill set is, it's quite good to have the parents there, and we can debate and discuss. And sometimes their skills parents didn't see or recognize, or sometimes it's the other way around, and the teen realizes, hey, mom and dad actually believe I can do this and this and this and this, and they've noticed that about me, so cool, I'm going to go for it.
But at the end of the day, Lisa, you're not saying, well, given this asset mapping and given the personal narrative and given the psychometric test, you are going to be a computer scientist.
No.
You're going to say,
definitive.
here are your skill set.
Yes. And I'm going to advise a course that is going to allow you to learn a multiple skill set.
Okay, that sounds like perfect sense. But now, it seems society is changing so fast. Technology is changing so fast. This whole concept of careers. My father worked for the same person for 40 years for a chemical company, AECI, and he was a chemical engineer, and that was his world, and it was seen everybody had to do that. I've worked with various people in my career, and I find the millennials are working even less. It's even a couple of months. Now that I think is just ridiculous.
No, that's ludicrous.
That is too extreme. But there's no such thing now as longevity in one particular job. You're looking for a range, almost a portfolio of careers.
Yeah, nobody's working for an eternity to get that gold retirement watch anymore. Okay, and they are. The millennials they're moving and they're shifting, and I encourage that. I always say when I do the career counselling, you know, you're going to evolve and you should have at least 5 careers in your lifespan. And that's just due to the nature of how the world's changing, technology is changing, people are changing. You know, you can do anything, you can work from anywhere.
Yes.
New careers are being created every week. So to have this idea of, I'm going to be in this career for the next 20 years, I think is a bit short-sighted. But that's my opinion.
I totally agree. And Kuli, when you look at your life, the variety, possibly it all fits under one umbrella of media, but at the same time, it's different things that you've been able to do.
I'm sitting here talking about a media center now, you know what I mean? An African media center. But you're absolutely right. It's everything connects together, from fashion editor, beauty editor, TV presenter, actress.
Yeah, but one step was necessary before you could move to the next thing.
Completely.
And that's the great thing, I suppose, that you need to tell youngsters going into a career that once you've made a choice, don't think it's for life.
No.
You will then be able to get that life experience, and it'll open another door for you. You might go in a different direction.
And to trust the process. You're not going to have immediate answers right now. And this is what they want, you know, instant gratification, instant feedback, instant answers, instant money, you know, and it just doesn't work like that. It takes time, but to trust the process and make informed decisions is generally what's best.
I think we are talking about young people, and obviously this was the focus. We're looking at parents and helping out the young people. If I go a little bit older, to people who have got themselves a career, which they are now hating, and don't have the means to go back, study something else, and now have to make a plunge. If they want to change careers, it might be too much of a sacrifice. Do you have people coming to you?
Yes, often we have adults coming who have already have their families and who have financial commitments and who are frightened. It's terrifying to move out of something into uncharted territory. But I always suggest that there are available options. There are learnerships. I advocate lifelong learning. There are short courses that you can go on. There are online courses if you want to work and study at the same time until you've got the resources to just do one thing alone. There's always a way, and it's just about navigating and getting someone to help you in that process. I often see adults who are completely depressed because they're in the wrong career, and that leads to a set of multiple issues that are not really related to career, but are linked. So there's always a way. There's always a way that you can change things.
Do people come to you with a fixed idea of, I'm going to choose a career based on how much money I'm going to earn,
Absolutely.
or how much, you mentioned the word status in life. So I need a career, ultimately I need status. So find me that path.
And that's again comes to your personal history. You know, I often see teens who come from a family background where there hasn't been a lot of money, and they've now decided, gee, I'm going to become the doctor so I can bring my family out of poverty, or I'm going to be the CA so I can drive the fancy sports car. So it depends what drives and motivates you. And again, it comes back to that personal narrative and your background. And it, you know, for me, it depends on the person. Financial status isn't a big value for me. So my choices are going to be completely different in terms of a career. I'm looking for personal fulfillment and giving back and interacting with people.
There's so many people you could tell that to
But
that need it.
there are many others who want that, and if that's what their value is, then that's fine. We've got to guide them in the right way, but at the end of the day, you've got to go to that job every day and feel fulfilled. And you can have a huge bank balance and still be an empty vessel. So
Yes. But Kuli, it just seems to me though that you've done this exercise, and we've spoken about it already. That you got your children to explore who they were, and you've made sure they understand where they've come from, and possibly that's why they've ended up being pretty well grounded by the sounds of things, understanding these processes. As you hear Lisa talking about the way things are done, are you going, I tick those boxes?
I'm not actually even.
yeah, I'm a good mom.
No, I'm actually agreeing with so many of the things that you're saying. I'm not ticking the
glad.
boxes. I'm ticking the boxes. No, but I'm loving what Lisa's saying, because I'm also learning by listening to her, because there's almost so much that I'm going to have to teach other people as soon as I leave this interview, because I keep on telling people about values and value. But as Lisa said as well, is that it's not about me judging them, but guiding them.
Their choice.
But
Yeah.
there's this notion of getting children to understand who they are and what they do. If we look at the role parents can play now
Yes.
in trying to shape their children
It's huge.
from the age of 12, to start talking about what are the tools that they should have to try and to get this personal narrative going.
Sure, that's a difficult one. It depends on the relationship you have with your child.
Well, probably there's the start.
Yeah.
Have a good relationship.
Have one.
Yeah.
You know, my first recommendation, and it's such a silly practical thing, eat meals together. Families don't do that anymore. They sit in front of a screen and there's no communication. How was school? Fine. This teacher, You know, we're not sitting together and going, okay, let's talk about you as the individual. Let's talk about personality traits. Let's talk about a value system. Let's talk about an exchange we've had with another person in the day and how that made us feel. So parents are encouraged to talk on an emotive level and speak about feelings and attitudes and values, and that doesn't happen. So my first bit of advice is have a meal together. It's so simple.
It is so simple.
Yeah.
I find that, I don't know, what was it like with your children? If I ask my kids, how was school today? Fine.
That's the
That
standard
is
answer.
it. And I'm told that that's what I did when I was a kid.
'Cause
It's a standard answer.
There's a standard answer.
So,
I think-
were your kids like that?
Of course,
Fine.
yeah, because they want to go off and do other things and rush around. Yeah, what I did was you give them their space, you give them the respect. They know what they have to do. I know what I have to do, and we do it together. I didn't. You have parents who will impose. So for me, I wasn't. This is my house. I pay the bills. It's a respect thing, and also that's the only way you'll actually get to know what kind of people they are if you allow them, as opposed to dictate to them.
Well, I like the tools that we're getting here. So we've got to get that concept of the family in place. You've got to have that frank and honest communication going on. But now, how much involvement can a parent have, should a parent have, when it comes to shaping those career choices? You want the child to have as much latitude, freedom to choose for themselves, but they need a parent to shape that, don't they? What's the involvement?
I think they need a parent to guide them, and I think you've got to, as a parent, just be careful that you don't become prescriptive. And I think that's what you're talking about, and authoritative, because naturally teenagers rebel to authority. So that recipe doesn't work. So I think it's about having a conversation and a dialogue and saying, I'm encouraging you as a parent to make an informed choice. So if you can come back to me and tell me that you've done the necessary research, you've done a bit of job shadowing, and this is really what you want to do, I'm going to support you 100%. But I would like you to have some kind of baseline of information that is informing the direction you're taking.
Yes.
And then I'm a satisfied parent. And I think that's the best thing to do, because then you're also equipping them with the skill of being independent, being an inquirer, and taking responsibility for that choice. Because ultimately, that child has to be accountable for their choice, not the parent.
Certainly. And we talk about the current or the emerging generation. What is the Generation Z we're talking about? How different is the way we approach careers compared with, say, 10, 15 years ago? Has it fundamentally changed as technology has changed, as the world has changed?
I think it definitely has changed. Back in the day, you were a nurse or a teacher if you were a woman, and that was about it. And then you kind of went into the professions that your family was in, or what you were exposed to. Nowadays, you can do anything. The world is your oyster. And that's what I encourage teens to do, to get out there, to research, to understand what is available to them. And you'll see in terms of career trends, if a child's only been exposed to traditional career fields, that's where they're going to go.
Yes.
With the advent of gaming and these professional gamers that now get paid millions to test out games, children are exposed to that, so now that's the popular trend. And it's so limited because it's one-sided and one-tracked. So it's best to encourage them to say, okay, well, you're interested in gaming, but let's expand on that. You can be a game developer, you can be this, you can be that within that realm. And I think that's what you did as well. So it's a matter of saying, okay, this is your interest, this is your niche, but how can we expand it?
In fact, what for me is quite bewildering about how fast everything changes is that there will be careers that my son, when he finally gets to that age of choosing, don't exist right now.
They don't, no.
So I don't know, how do I shape for something I don't even know is going to exist?
But that's where I'm saying brainstorm these ideas. I mean, I went online and I looked at careers of 2030, and there were things coming up like memory augmentation specialists, privacy consultants, vertical farmers. These are discussions you should be having with your teen, because that's what they are going to be exposed to when they finally enter the world of work.
But Kuli, I mean, I just find myself trapped in my own universe to think of this world of robotics, for example.
I just learned how to open an app.
Well, you have to stay as current as you can about things.
Absolutely.
And as fast as I try to do that, I find that I'm being run away with. I mean, I just, in the last couple of years, decided that I've got to get to grips with Facebook. And I really felt it was too much of an invasion of my privacy. And then once I realized that there's a whole lot of controlling mechanisms, that was also fine.
That was me.
Then I find that Facebook's, that's so last century.
It's done.
Everybody's moved on now. It's something else. But it's also a different world that I'm not so bothered about it. But my 5-year-old comes to me with his little Nintendo game, and Lego Batman won't do whatever it is with the Joker. I can't help him. I have no idea what to do. And I'm supposed to be the bloke who helps him carve his career choices in the future. I find myself a little intimidated by that, Lisa.
I think it's absolutely intimidating and terrifying for parents who don't live in this realm. But then my advice is do a skill exchange. Get your child to skill you up on technology, and then you skill them up on the art of conversation,
The art of conversation, absolutely.
Things like that. So there can always be an exchange. Always.
I'm happy that the old-fashioned models are still appropriate.
Yes.
Communication, family values.
I was thinking about the other day, what about handwriting? When was the last time? Because I have a black book for my columns. I write them in my black book, then I type them. But people don't write anymore.
I was filling out a visa application form. My hand got sore because I had to do so much writing. How mad is that? Does anybody, you don't write exams anymore, you type your exams?
You do. I think if you mention the word calligraphy to a high school student now, they'd look at you and go, what is that?
When you think of those careers that are like fax machine technician, that's a career that you don't want to go into. But there'll be some other kind of technician that you'd want to do.
I didn't even know that there were already jobs for the future posted. nice.
Yeah, just kind of, and there's a lot of research that's happening, and there are great descriptors on all of this. So that's just, that's what you've got to encourage your teen to do, to get out there, use the internet for something other than gaming.
I mean, if you think about
use it for research.
that people have shops, they have online shops now.
Yes.
What's the point of buying rent?
Yes.
Yeah, running a shop, being a shopkeeper. I don't know if that's a career that's going to be around in 2030.
It's going to be redundant.
We're going to wrap it up. Kuli, some final thoughts from you. Based on this conversation, is there anything you would have done differently with your kids in the way you've shaped them?
No, but I definitely would have consulted just for extra. And I think what you've got to say is very, very important, because we're out there, we're chasing money and we're chasing paper, and we're forgetting about the nuclear family, we're forgetting about the children, we're forgetting to eat together, we're forgetting about Ubuntu. So what you're saying is very, very important.
Speaking my language.
Lisa, for you, what are the essential things you'd like people to learn as a result of this conversation, to get out of this conversation?
I think for parents to get professional help, because parents are busy, they're working, they don't necessarily have as much time available to invest in these kinds of discussions. So getting professional help, relying on the schools to also play their part. Career guidance is very much a part of the life orientation curriculum. So there is that input, and then doing the research. UJ is having a career fair in August. Go to the career fair, attend these exhibitions with your children, ask them questions and get them to become inquirers and be role models. If you model the right kind of value set, the right kind of behavior, and you sit at a table and you say, wow, I went and researched this, and you teach your child to be the inquirer, they'll follow suit. And things should fall into place. I still think there's a place for psychometric testing, not as the absolute definitive, but it does start you off on a platform of, this is what your skill set is, this is where your cognitive ability is. Your perceptual skills aren't magnificent, but your verbal comprehension is brilliant. So let's go into a degree where you can do linguistics, not necessarily chemistry. And that's where I think the psychometrics play a valuable role. So we're not setting up children for failure, we're setting them up for success.
Well, I've found this an invaluable conversation.
Definitely.
The first thing I'm going to do is get the kids to eat around the table.
Yeah.
I think that's a lovely starting point.
Yes.
Lisa, it's fabulous chatting to you. Kuli, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. My thanks to Lisa Anderson and to Kuli Roberts. I hope you've enjoyed this IRIS session on the Change Exchange as much as I have. I hope you've got a lot of information that might help you not only shape your own career, but the career of your children. Join us again next month for another IRIS session. From me, David O'Sullivan. Bye-bye.